Today we are going to be talking about the book Empty Lives by Joanna de Angelis and Divaldo Franco. And we have been studying chapter by chapter. And today we are in chapter 8, and each chapter brings different subjects for us to think about, to meditate, and to, above all, to put in practice in our day-to-day lives. I'm going to share the screen so that you can follow the reading. We always do like this. We start reading, and then we stop for comments, for questions, and the participation of you all. So the chapter today is called From Any Aspect. Nowadays, in an in-depth analysis of Jesus' personality, there are special fascinating conclusions that characterize his unique, remarked existence. This is because Jesus is the most extraordinary being in the history of humankind. In addition to having divided the historic timeline, he displayed unheard of behaviors that ennoble him from every angle. For those individuals who deny his spiritual greatness and leadership for reaching the kingdom of God, other conditions arise that cannot be ignored, much less underestimated. So in this chapter, she's going to start presenting to us Jesus and leading us to reflect about Jesus' existence. Although some of, like she mentions here, even believe that he was not there. And she calls the attention that because of him, even the timeline was divided before him and after him, before before Christ and after Christ, and now they call it a common era, right? So she continues saying, he lives in a modest village of simple, uneducated people where there was no one who could have taught him lessons about universal wisdom. Clinging to their disturbing intrigues and traditions, no one have ever stood out in the community. All were living according to the small aspirations of everyday life without one flash of illuminated thought. Yet, without any terrestrial learning, at 12 years of age, he dialogued with the rabbis in Jerusalem, those bearers of impeccable education, and he was able to astound them with amazing ethical and aesthetic ability. A philosopher of a rare doctrine, the doctrine of love. He had not attended any academy, but he revolutionized the sentiments in a synthesis that entailed the traditions of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, and he acquired more followers than the three combined. So here, she starts inviting us to think about all the possibilities that Jesus possessed and how this was not the result of his education, the result of his, or teachers that could have been there during his time in the city where he lived with his parents in Nazareth. So we know that knowledge was very limited. Yet when he goes to the temple only with 12 years of age, he's not only capable of understanding everything that the rabbis that studied day after day, long hours, the whole day, could not have this kind of knowledge, this kind of wisdom. But mainly the point that she mentions here is that he brought just one doctrine, one teaching that would be the one of love, when he teaches us, starting by saying that God is love. It was no longer that God presented by Moses, the God that we feared, but the God that loves us and gives us opportunities so that we can each time more understand God and go in the direction of God. Any question or comment so far? Okay, so a revolutionary for the good, he faced the most dreadful conjunctures that had built the Roman Empire, yet without spilling the blood of those who opposed him, which led to the martyrdom of more than 1 million disciples during the first centuries. This is also something extraordinary. People were afraid that he was going to, become a revolutionary, and even to act as one in those times, and even today, with bloodshed and all that. And was never promoted by Jesus or any others during his time. A distinctive therapist, needing no conventional instrumentation, he went straight to the genesis of the afflicted, who sought him and identified their ills as well as their causes, and immediately resolved them. An incomparable master, he used nature as his lectern, and from plain, usual, and familiar things, he offered profound teachings which still cause surprise. His parables were and continue to be pages of life, rich in wisdom and bearers of unusual psychological guidance. An excellent orator, he gave the most beautiful, enchanting sermons and poems ever known, such as the Sermon on the Mount and the I Am discourses. No one who heard him ever forgot his commentaries and his beautiful expressions. So she mentions now about some of his attributes, his qualities, as knowing and understanding the needs of people even before they would go to them. And in many times, even though he was going to promote the healing of some of them, he would always say, go and sin no more. Don't do things that led you to become ill in the first place. So he would be teaching us, he would be helping us in all this sense. And for those who heard his voices, and for us that can have the remembrance of hearing him, maybe not during his lifetime, but in other occasions perhaps, we still shelter within our hearts the enchantment that all his teachings and enlightenment that all his teachings brought to us, especially like she mentions here, the Sermon on the Mount, that is considered one of the most important religious, philosophical, spiritual discourses that we have. But also, like she mentions, the I am, for instance, I am the path to truth and life, among others. So this is the impact that Jesus has made in our lives. Anyone would like to ask any question or comments? Okay, so let's continue here. A perfect citizen, he never failed to fulfill his legal duties, observing the unfair laws in force at the time, and never abandoned or neglected the ministry for which he had come to earth. So let us just remember when he was questioned about if they had to pay tributes, and he asked us, what is the face that we see in this coin? In the face of Caesar. So give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. So he never went against the human laws of his times as well. A faithful friend, he surrounded himself with the neediest people in order to help them, yet he did not deny aid to those of the so-called upper social classes. So most of the time people will say, oh, Jesus was just followed by the poor. Because many times when you have nothing else to lose, it's easier for us to open our ears and our hearts to other things that do not necessarily belong to the material aspect of life. And we find hope and we find encouragement in all that. But we know that many were the ones that belonged to the upper classes of his times that looked for him. For instance, the one responsible for the synagogue in Capharnaum, Jairus, and his daughter was basically dying and dead when Jesus arrived there. And there is this thing that he calls her back to life. And well, in Spiritism, we know that she was not completely detached from the spirit, the physical body. Otherwise, it wouldn't be impossible even for Jesus to derogate to the laws of nature. But she was in the process of, if not attended properly, it would lead to her death. Any comments or question? Okay. As humble as anyone, he managed to sensitize everyone who met him without acquiescing to the perverse demands of the habits of his time. An advocate of the unfortunate, he defended them with such eloquence that he went beyond academics' lessons and set everyone free. Truth will set you free. He never wrote a single word, yet he bequeathed to posterity the most complete doctrine of love still blooming on humanity. Only Francis of Assisi was able to imitate him, becoming a simile made in the light of love, never disdain or pretend to ignore him. So, in this first part of this chapter, like I said, she starts by reminding us with few information, because this is nothing compared to what Jesus is and what Jesus did during his time here on earth, and not to mention, before and after. And she said that there was no one that could approach what Christ was except Francis of Assisi. And so she wants us to think and to meditate about the difficult times, about the context, about, the intrigues, everything that he suffered to the point of giving himself to sacrifice, but is still maintaining himself completely in accordance to the law of God. Before we go to the second part, do you have any comment or questions that you would like to add?
Yes. What does it mean that only Francis of Assisi was able to imitate him? Why was that? Francis of Assisi was the benefactor of animals, and I don't get the connection exactly.
I think when you reach a point where you uh, you are touching perfection, and you really understand uh, the presence of God, the magnitude of the universe, the creation, and understanding, like he mentioned all the times, that they are our little brothers and sisters. And this was, I mean, extraordinary, because today, not only in spiritism, but in other philosophies, we study about the stages of evolvement that a created being first intelligent principle until reaches the state of uh, being a human being goes through, and all the learning we go through this stage. That's why Francis of Assisi had a different regard in relation to all of them. He would understand their role. He would understand that they were beings created by God. He would understand that, like ourselves, they would go to all this period of transition and growing as well. And I think that there is a beautiful uh, thing that, among so many others, that Francis of Assisi left with us. Actually, this weekend I watched the Prime TV, um, a movie about his life. It's called Francesco, and it's very beautiful. It's his closest followers getting together to uh, put some notes about him, about his life. And you know, of course, it's a movie, and there are things that maybe don't match that much, but it's quite inspiring. So if you wanted to watch it,
I will.
yeah, Francesco. Okay, uh, let's go to the second part then. In today's hustle and bustle, as pride, unjust temporal power, cunning, and unmeasured ambition receive first importance. Sordid campaigns are organized to deny his existence or to scorn his teachings. When he stated that the poor in spirit, the humble, and the simple heart, those who suffer injustice and the forgotten are blessed, he reserved the deceptive prescriptions of the time. Yet today there are still violent reactions by the improvident and the rich in vainglory. While modern psychology does recognize guilt and anxiety as powerful endogenous factors that generate emotional disturbances, Jesus had occasion to propose the preventive therapy of forgiveness and self-forgiveness, just as he recommended special care in relation to today without being stressed about what tomorrow may bring. So now is when she's going to lead us to reflect about what is our situation today? What are we living today? And why are we, after more than 2,000 years, not approaching and to some even seeing that seeming that we are going on the opposite direction. So and this is not in accordance to what he taught, to what we learned, and to what people we still study and discuss nowadays. So why? Because we are always giving too much importance just to material aspects of life. Again, we are never ever saying that we have to dismiss the opportunity of life, the material aspect, the necessities we have to survive. We are on a material world. We need material things to survive, starting with water and food. But we have to be careful with everything that we put on our plate that shouldn't be there. And one thing that she's talking about, for instance, in terms of guilt and anxiety, those are things that Jesus taught us already how, to try to prevent that. First, starting with self-forgiveness, because sometimes, when we feel guilt, it's exactly because of that. We acknowledge that we did something that we shouldn't have done, but then instead of working on our recovery, on our renewal, we stay still in the guilt, because making amends is not such an easy process, right? So forgiveness, self-forgiveness, and also not give ourselves, trying at least, I know that sometimes it's not possible, but trying at least not to be too much anxious. Any comments or questions now? Okay. He valued the attitudes of pure friendship with the 12, the apostles, with Lazarus and his two sisters. And he taught true fraternity that touches hearts. Those who follow him in the early days were massacred and martyred, but not suppressed due to the loved significance of his lessons to make earthly existence happy. In the beautiful soil of sacrifice, their plant of love grew and became a garden of blessings for days gone by, or for those in the near future. So all the lessons about friendship, about fraternity, about, us really working and valuing the perennial things of life, even when we see that even today, people that try to profess faith not necessarily are that much accepted. And again, making reference to this movie of Francis of Assisi, here he was like in the 13th century and the 1200s, just trying to live like Jesus and being so much misunderstood and thought, and people would accuse him of being crazy. So it's really hard, this path, even for us today, with everything that we have that calls all our attention to accept others, to accept faith, others' faith and habits and all that. We not necessarily receive the respect to profess whatever faith we have. Like it or not, here. Nonetheless, at certain period of civilization, his teachings were adulterated and were adapted to the lying interest of the world. But despite this cruelty and cowardice, true followers of his word arose who consecrate the truth on the earth. Like it or not, Jesus is heaven's answers to the afflicted appeals of a world in the throes of the inferior human passions, an answer for their defeat. Even today, when certain individuals are determined to annul his influence, he tends to his flock through spirit emissaries who inspire individuals through responsible mediums who transmit message from the Most High with honesty and selflessness. So, yes, go ahead, Maureen. You're going to say something?
Yes, I've been thinking a lot about what is going on in the country and probably the world, but particularly here with, every day it's shootings all over the country, mass shootings, road rage, all sorts of really evil things.
Mhm.
And why aren't we able to deal with it? I mean, I don't really think this is caused by anxiety. I don't know what it's caused by, but it's certainly not good. Can you kind
Yeah,
of,
Marlene, we we are living a time of transition, and transition is never easy because when the new, and normally let's understand the new as representing something better than we had before, uh, it start, let's say, spreading its wings, people that like the old ways will come at it with even more fierce than before. And this is why we are seeing that the resistance. No, we don't want a new order of things. No, we don't want respect, acceptance, fraternity, equality, liberty. We like our ways, you see. And so it's the last cry to try to maintain things in the same way. And like you said, it's being worldwide. If we look around, if we look about, uh, diseases, wars, politics, those mental disturbances, the abuse of the those that are more tendency to the wrong road than the right road. But it's going to change. It's just the rebellion, the final rebellion for in order to try to maintain things the way it was. But when time comes, they will not be able to deter the march to betterment, to this future. So unfortunately, I don't know. In a way, I think that we are privileged in being part of this new wave of thinkers. Um, and this, regardless of age, it has nothing to do with age because the spirit has no age, right? And being part and make a difference, even if this difference is just a prayer that we say every day to cleanse the psychosphere of our planet. It may not seem much, but actually it helps a lot, because if more people are thinking good things, are uniting, like it says here, Jesus sent his spirit emissaries. We unite with the spirit emissaries in this, adding our little flickering light, to their luminous light, it's more light, it's more light all the time. But because we have barely started in this new journey, we will see ourselves with the ups and downs, and some of events, some occurrences will impact us more than others. And then is when sometimes we lose faith until we get back on track again. And this is what happened. This was what happening, Marvin.
well, it's really frightening.
Yes, I agree with you.
And you
It,
just wonder, how far is it going to go? We don't know.
well, we, you know, are at the very beginning of this phase of transition. And normally they use this kind of image for us to understand. We are already there in a world of regeneration, but we are in minute 1 or 2 of the next day. So it is still dark. And we don't see that much difference between 11:59 or 1 minute a.m. of the following day, but it's happening. Yes, Andrea, you want to say something?
I don't know if I misunderstood you or I didn't hear properly. So are we, you say we are an expiation and we're moving to regeneration, right? So you saying that we are already
Yes.
almost in regeneration, and this is okay. I think I
Yes.
misunderstood. I was like, oh my God, are we still in expiation? That's like, no, okay, good.
No, from what we understand, it's been some decades already.
Okay.
Yeah, so that we have or I mean really move it to this new phase, well, to this new condition. But like we said, when it's just 1 minute of the new day, it's still completely dark outside.
Yeah.
And I mean, until it's 5 a.m. like Marlene asked, there is still a way to go, but you know, the light is coming.
Yes.
It cannot be stopped. And,
Yes.
and during this time of transition is where we as spirits are going to decide which place I would like to live. Because those who do not fit what is supposed to be a world of regeneration, they will not be able to continue here. But it's not going to be, let's say, an imposition and say you cannot stay. It's our choice, and the choice is given to us now. This is why Joanna de Angelis is bringing to us this lesson, saying, look at Jesus. 2,000 years ago, he came to talk to you, to humanity, all of this, to give teachings, all of those things, to give more than teachings, examples, like, see, it is possible to live like this. Okay, maybe according to your point of views of just looking at life in a material perspective, you don't envy my life, but from when you are capable of understanding spiritual perspective, you will see that it's much better, not to have a bed to sleep than not to have peace in your heart. You may have the most luxurious, excellent bed and everything, but if you don't have peace, you don't sleep. You don't sleep well, right? So this is, and now she's saying it's time for you. Look at what is happening in your world, but do not become dismayed by that. Just to start putting, embracing the knowledge, collaborating with the spirit emissaries, and trying to change the world, starting from yourself. Yeah, and this is something that we hear so quite often, right? Like Gandhi even said. Okay.
This morning
Uh-huh.
on Yahoo News, they said that the doomsday clock, which has been around for a long, long time, has grown even shorter. And I thought, well, this doesn't speak well to our situation.
I couldn't understand what they caught.
It's called the doomsday clock.
Okay, okay.
And
Yeah.
it's been around for a long time.
Mhm.
But now they say it's growing even shorter. In other words, they think doomsday is fast approaching.
Yeah, but you see, um, even before I could understand that much about the knowledge that I have today, and much more literature that we have here that we can research in terms of spirituality, spiritual values, immortality, and all that. we look in the history of humankind, and we had so many doomsdays, right? The Y2K is just around the corner, right? When people thought we were going to get into a crisis, computers were going to crash, and all of those things. And fortunately, none of them happened. Every turn of the century, people think that I think intuitively we understand that every century has to be to become something new, has to represent the death of the old ways of living. It's not the world, you see. So I think we should learning from history, okay, not because we are going to accept um, let's say knowledge concepts, but because we are going to look at our history. Okay, we will see how many times we went through that. I remember even myself, in my lifetime, there were times that a comment was going to crash here. Then there was a date that was set to be the end of the world. Then there was the Y2K, and here we are, stronger and getting better, even if it doesn't seem that much, because the progress, it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't go by leaps and bounds. It's something that we have to nourish. So Jesus stated that he would not leave people orphans of his love, and suddenly, like a sublime, well-led army, the spirits of the good invaded the planet in songs of exaltation and charity, demonstrating that he, as the divine mariner, is steering the terrestrial barge to the port of safety where peace reigns. Seek to follow him without much discussion. If you are suffering, think of him. If your soul is in tatters, seek his help. And if you are at peace, leave him and divulge him to the tormented world of these times. So I like very much the way that she ends this chapter here, because then she reassures us that we are not alone, and that Jesus has never abandoned us, that he continues responsible for us and continues, like she said in the previous paragraph, sending emissaries. And now when we are, this army, like well-led army, like says, of spirits, they are communicating everywhere. We see spirit communication in many branches of religious and the spiritual places, and it's almost everywhere that people has this experience, or has someone in the family, or has a friend, and knowledge is spreading about this. And the thing that she invites us to do is trust in Jesus, trust that he is taking care of us, that he is commanding this terrestrial barge to the ports of safety. And whenever we are visited by pain, by challenges, by suffering, let's turn to him, to ask for help, to ask for guidance, to ask for courage, that we know that this is going to end, this is going to pass. And the peace that we may already have, of course, it's not going to be complete. We can, in our attitude, impact the lives of others as well. It's not so much as preaching, but exemplifying in our day-to-day lives. Like Francis of Assisi used to say, preach the gospel and use words if necessary. Okay, so that's the lesson we have for today.